Okay, 2021 Eagleman this year. Let's get this out of the way for us. Okay, Eagleman 2021. So, we are going to immediately roll through this athlete guide here. Then we're going to talk about specific course strategy as pertains to this individual course here. If you have any questions about anything we talk about here, make sure you let me know in the comments down below or shoot me an email or text message, whatever. Friday, June 11th is the first day that you'll be able to check in. There are going to be shuttle bus services on that day coming from the high school or the middle school and the other part of town. There's also going to be bike check-in available for that day. This year you're going to be able to choose your bike check-in time when you check in, which is kind of cool. Next day, Saturday, is the last day to check in. You cannot check in the next day for bike drop-off or check in yourself. So make sure you do it on Saturday if you have not done it already on Friday. There are going to be shuttle bus services again over here. Ironman stores available. Make sure you got your bike tech and you got your bike serviced if it needs anything fixed. And then Sunday is the big day. That is the big day with a race start of 6:40, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's get into it. I'm just going to roll through everything over here. We have our return to racing, pretty much to stay distant. And when you're on the race site, make sure that you are wearing a mask. They're going to really hammer down on that this year. So athlete check-in. You can do 2 times, Friday from noon to 7 or Saturday from 8 to 4:30. Can't check in on race day. The address is Gary Boyle State Park in Cambridge, Maryland. Check-in screening, they're going to pretty much take your temperature. You will have to pick up your timing chip as well. It's not part of your materials when you get checked in. Also, before we kind of go away from this, make sure you have everything in your athlete check-in packet before you leave. Make sure you have your stickers, make sure you get your wristband, make sure you have everything. It's not unheard of for an athlete to not get their stickers for the bike or the run, so just make sure you have all of those before leaving, and that way it speeds up the process of fixing it if there is an issue. Okay, so they're going to talk about all these questions for the COVID concerns in the last 14 days. You're going to have to answer these a couple of times, so just get used to it. The pre-event swim advisement. So you can swim before. It's on the left-hand side away from that the race area. Keep in mind there are going to be no lifeguards there. You are going to be able to swim that morning, race morning, in that area as well, but you're going to have to get out 15 minutes before so you can get in your corral so that you can cross the timing mat. If you fail to get out of your swim warm-up and immediately start the race without getting out of the water, you will be an automatic DQ. So keep that in mind, okay? Just be smart out there. 15 minutes before that race starts, you're going to have to be out. Timing chips, they have to be worn on your left ankle. That is for photography purposes and to just ensure that you are not cheating. If you fail to turn in your timing chip at the end, you can be disqualified. So make sure you do that. Bikes cannot be removed from transition after being racked. No exceptions. So another thing to just be sure you have figured out before you get into that transition for that bike drop-off, which you will get to choose when you check in. You're going to be able to choose a set of times, so that'll be really good, really easy. This is what they're going to have on race morning. You know, there's going to be no body marking this year. You can mark yourself if you want, but pretty much your wristband's going to be your key to everything, so don't mess that up and cut it off before the race starts. Aid stations on the bike. Well, actually, backing up here, I skipped this. Transition is going to open at 4:45 on race morning. Excuse me. And I just lost my train of thought here, but do not wear your bib number when you swim. Leave it on your gear. And then new in 2021, athletes will wait at their transition rack prior to swim start and will be called by estimated swim finish times. You'll be able to choose those, so that'll be really, really cool. I'm sure they're going to talk about this a lot, so make sure you watch the briefing for Friday and Saturday. There's going to be all kinds of stuff on Saturday as well. You're just not going to be able to miss it. So just make sure you pay attention, ask some questions with this specific procedure, because every race is a little bit different right now. Aid stations are going to be every 15 miles apart on the bike. On the run, they're going to be about every mile or so, maybe every mile and a half, but they're going to be coming fast, and you'll see that later. On the bike, they're going to have water, Gatorade, Red Bull. They're going to have their new Morton gels, which are good and bad. You know that they have a higher viscosity in them. Calories are a little bit lower, and that sodium's going to be a little bit lower as well. So it's more of an empty gel. So just keep that in mind. It's going to come in super handy out on this race. The energy squares, same kind of a deal. Fig bars, and then on the run, pretty much the same, except they're going to have chips, pretzels, and fruit, and that bananas. They might have some other fruit out there, so just keep that in the back of your head if you want something like that on race day. The bike aid stations, they're going to be all hand out. They're going to be all normal for you. The run are all going to be self-serve, grab, and go. Before we get off this subject, make sure that if you're grabbing your fuel from the run, you're actually grabbing the amount that you want. So, for instance, say you want a Gatorade. What has happened a lot in the last couple of races in the last month or so is that cup will be half full. So just make sure you don't just grab a cup and expect it to be full or a quarter full. So you might have to slow down at those aid stations, which is not the end of the world. Make sure you get as much as you need, because it is self-serve, so you'll be able to grab as much as you need. But if you're powering through the transitions and just grabbing one cup, that cup could be full, it could be not full, there could be barely anything in it. So just pay attention when you're going through those transition areas, especially on the run. On the bike, as you know, it's just going to be pretty much chaos at all the transition areas. It's a faster course, so there's going to be more high-speed collisions. There's going to be people stopped and then peel out when they're done with grabbing their fuel. So just make sure you're aware of everything on the bike the fueling areas, because those are super, super dangerous, especially on a course like this, because the speed is going to be high. Timing chip, we already talked about that. Make sure you wear it on your left ankle. Don't lose it. Cutoffs, I'm not too concerned with those. If you need to look at those and you're concerned about those, make sure you head over to page 12 of the athlete guide. We will talk about the wetsuits in a minute. Parking and shuttle, they're going to be from the middle school. The second one is also going to be from the Sailwinds Park over here. And if you look, there is a map that they've graciously displayed for us. This is the middle school over here, a little bit longer of a ride. I like it better because there's more parking and that kind of stuff over there, a little more spread out. And then the other one, the Sailwinds Park right over here, that is a little bit different. It's closer, sure, but it is it's going to be a little more crowded, a little more popular, more hotels over there. So Friday and Saturday bike check-in. There's going to be shuttles, as mentioned before. Sunday, there's going to be shuttles as well. They recommend only athletes in the shuttle bus. So if you are traveling with other people, then they're probably going to have to walk, which isn't the end of the world. If you do end up parking in town, make sure you are parking at a place where parking is allowed, because they will actively be towing, and they will want to tow your car on race day. Shuttles are going to be running from 4:30 to 6, and every 15 minutes will be a shuttle bus. Bike and gear checkout after the race, 1:30 to 5. There's going to be a little bit of food there. It's going to be a little different. Again, they're going to have a little grab and go, but make sure if you're really concerned about the food after the race, make sure you talk to volunteer or someone when you're checking in. They're going to have a lot of these answers over there. They're also going to have a lot of these answers at the athlete check-in briefing, which is going to be online. Check out the Facebook page. It's pretty active. They're usually pretty good about it. The awards ceremony, it's going to be new this year, similar to other events that have already happened. You're going to be able to pick up your awards from 4 to 5:30. You're going to have to wear a mask. You're going to have to be socially distant. And I believe they will hold the awards for you for 30 days, and if you don't pick them up in 30 days, they're just going to donate them. So that is pretty much it. Lost and found. If you lose anything, email eagleman70.3@ironman.com. They will get back to you as fast as possible. Faster ways to grab a volunteer, get them on the horn, and just start bothering them about it. Finisher's certificate, you can download that at ironman.com/eagleman70.3. Look for your name, print your results at the end. If there's any issues with your results, make sure you email timing@ironman.com as soon as possible to get those remedied. You can also probably track down someone, a timing official, someone like that, and that will also speed up the process, because anytime you don't try to fix the problem there on site, it becomes really, really hard to chase these guys down afterwards. So if there's an issue, make sure you fix it at race site. Awards, we're not too worried about those. Qualifying, there's a little bit of a new procedure in this year. They are going to be doing it on race site. They are going to be doing it electronically. If you fail to show up, you will have, I think the electronics slot allocation roll down starts on June 14th. If you get emailed, you're going to have 2 days to respond if you want to go to St. George's World Championships or not this year. If you let those 48 hours lapse, they will immediately just go to the next person, and they'll keep going down the line. I believe at this race, every slot has one qualifying, or every age group has one qualifying slot. But keep in mind that if no one shows up in an age group, say they take it from the 70 to 75 males, they will give the next largest male age group a slot allocation. Same thing on the ladies' side. Allocation process, if you want to read more into it, you can look at page 20 on the athlete guide. Pretty much it's saying everything that I have already just said. So make sure you're there. If you want, if you think you're close, make sure you're looking at the Ironman Tracker app. It's going to be super handy because everything is in time trial start this year. So you're not going to really know where anyone is until about 30, 45 minutes after you're done racing. Then you can pretty much, it becomes a lot more credible from there. But you're just going to have to be patient and wait for a little bit. Okay, so all that, I know I ran through it really fast. If you want to read through the athlete guide a little bit more, you can. It's up on the race website over there. This part is, we're going to just dive into these course specifics over here and everything you need to know from the swim, bike, and run standpoint. So without further ado, first thing is the swim. Obviously, it's only one loop here. There are different finishing categories that you can self-select yourself into. If you think you can go, or if you're pretty sure you're doing a 25-minute half Ironman swim, I would probably put yourself under the 25-minute barrier just so you can have a better race experience. If you put yourself in that 25 to 29 category and you are on the low end of that category, it's not going to be a good time for you, because everyone that is around that 30-minute mark is going to be rubbing elbows with you in the swim, and that's not what you want. You want to be doing that with people who are a little bit faster. But if you are trying to finish the swim in 40 minutes, you should not be in the under 25 area. So just be smart about it on race day. If you want to bump up a category, you can, but just keep in mind, if you're pushing the limits of that category on the higher end, then you probably should not skip to the next category. So just be smart on that. They say that you're going to be hanging out by your bikes until your corral is called, so make sure you're paying attention to that. That is something that I have not had experience with at any race before this year. So make sure that this is actually going to be the process. It's not uncommon for races to change their procedure on race day or the days leading up to it. So this is the athlete guide that's been posted for a couple of weeks now, and things could change. So make sure you watch that athlete briefing video, or just be on the Facebook group, because there's going to be all kinds of questions. They are pretty good about monitoring those. The swim itself, you're going to start out here on the eastern side of this little point, and the water's going to be super shallow to start. So do not jump in and immediately dolphin dive in, because the water is going to be 2.5 feet deep in some places, maybe even less. As you get further out, probably around this first buoy right here, it starts to dip off to around 3.5 feet deep, and then you can start swimming a lot more. So keep that in mind. And if you are towards the middle part of these corrals, you're going to have all the faster people stepping on all the things in the water that you don't want to. So that'll be good. They'll mat it down for you. If you are in the faster groups, that's another thing to keep in mind. It is a pretty marshy area. So as soon as you could get down and start actually swimming, the better for this one, believe it or not. There's typically some stuff on the bottom of the floor. Ironman does go in and try to eliminate some of that, but they never really get all of it. And in the days leading up to it, you can really see, because this is the practice area over here. Typically, the jellyfish like to hang out in this area or in this area. Very rarely is it both, because of the way the top current flows in here. This acts as a major catch-all for a lot of jellyfish typically, but I have seen it where this area serves as the catch for a lot of jellyfish as well. So you're just going to have to keep that in mind on race day. But this is going to be the practice area over here. It is a great little lagoon thing over here. It's not really super deep until you start to get a little further towards the middle of the channel, and it does drop off pretty quickly out there. As I mentioned, for jellyfish, yeah, it is what it is. There's probably going to be some jellyfish over there. This area is notorious for them. Typically, the wetsuits are going to be legal, and if that's the case, you only really have to worry about your feet, hands, and face or neck. A popular strategy to avoid the jellyfish sting is Vaseline. You can put it on your hands, you can put it on your feet, put it on everywhere. I will warn you, though, that if you put the Vaseline right around your eyes before you put your goggles on, it'll be really hard for your goggles to have any sort of an effective seal on them, because you've just created a little barrier between your skin and the goggle. So that might want to be one of the last things you do in that transition area when your corral is called, is putting that Vaseline on. If you have a little tiny one, or you can put some in a bag and just drop it off in a trash can 5 seconds before you head out, that could be a great way as well. You don't have to do it. It's just a suggestion. I know there's all kinds of other products out there that are doing the same thing, like baby oil, that kind of stuff. I don't like the baby oil ideas, because you do have to bike and run, and on this race course, you're going to find out that there is not a lot of shade anywhere. So if that's the case, you've effectively just tattooed yourself with some baby oil, and you just said, hey son, go ahead and give me a giant sunburn. So up to you. But back to the swim. So again, once you get around this buoy right here, that is where you can really start to swim again. And talking about currents here, because there is this little jut out over here, same with the jellyfish that we kind of touched on a little earlier. The water typically gets pushed in this direction or in the opposite direction. So if that's the case, all the jellyfish are getting pushed over right here. But what that means is there's really not going to be a whole lot of current over here if it is going in a counterclockwise motion. But then once you start to get out over into this area, that counterclockwise motion is going to start to really start to hamper you a little bit. Now, if it's going in a clockwise pattern, coming back in is not going to be fun, right? Counterclockwise, it's going to really push you back in, which is going to be great. It's going to be great. I've seen it both ways, and once you get around this buoy right here, you can really see, once you're standing out on this little jutty boat landing area, you'll be able to see the current, and it's typically a top current because it's not very deep on either side. So you can, if you can't see it over here, you'll really be able to see it over here, and you can use it as a gauge over there. But just watch the water for a couple of seconds and see where it's going, and after that, you'll know. You will know. Also, if you're going in one of these later waves and you see the athletes fly out over there and it looks like they are crushing it, that is because the current is helping them. There's probably going to be a big backup if that is the case over here, right? Because everyone can kind of like handle the cross current a little bit right here. But again, once you start to get out into that main channel, the currents start to play a much bigger factor. They are counting on a current that is going counterclockwise for you to help you come back in, but they do get it wrong occasionally. If you are fighting the current coming back in, this shallow area, I mean, you're going to get a little bit more of a benefit, but it is really shallow, so it's not going to be as powerful for you. So that's where you're going to see your slower swim times overall. Um, but coming into this area over here, this first turn with a tail current pushing you towards this buoy right here, this buoy becomes really deceptive because you're going to arrive at it a lot sooner than later. When you do that, typically everyone makes the turn late and then they end up somewhere right out here. And they have to fight additional current to get back over there. So watch the water before, and if you are getting pushed out here, make sure you're on it right away. And this turn is going to feel like you're almost going past 90 degrees here, probably like a 120-degree turn right here, because you're going to have to fight that current. In your currents, when you're fighting a crosswind or a cross current, instead of aiming right here, you're going to have to know where this buoy is, and you can kind of play it off of this one. And you're going to have to aim a little bit further inwards, because if the current is pushing you this way, if you're aiming over here where this arrow is, theoretically, right, it's actually going to force you to swim straight in that line right there. And that's what most athletes are going to forget on this day. Once you make this turn, right, well, backing up really fast, and then I'll stop talking about the first turn. This first turn over here is typically a pile-up central. This one and this one, right? This one is a pile-up because everyone turns and doesn't know what's happening, so they all stop, and everyone that's swimming behind them just swims right over top of them. It's a big mess. Don't be the person who stops, right? Just keep making those corrections. If you are aiming over here and you find that you're starting to drift over here, just correct yourself and aim a little to the left, and that way you will slowly start to get back on pace towards that buoy over there. This second turn buoy is another point where people really start to bunch up. You're not going to be blinded by the sun anymore, which will be good, but you'll be fighting this current over here in this scenario. And if you are fighting the current, that's when people bunch up just because they're going slower. Picture it like a hill out on the road, right? Bike or run. Anytime you run up those hills, everyone bunches together because it's a much slower pace and everyone's going pretty much the same speed. In this long section right over here, it will behoove you to play a little leapfrog in here if you have the capability to do so. If you do not, then it's just your self-selected pace and your pace markers up here. But during this stretch, do not blow up. Okay, if you get to this first buoy and you realize I'm going way too fast, there's way too much effort here, you need to slow it down even though you are in that current situation right there. You do need to have the effort level high enough where you are actually moving, because if you're just swimming in the same spot, that's not good for anyone. So sometimes you don't have a choice and you have to pick up the pace, but you're going to have to be really in tune with your effort level and the water, using these landmarks off to the side, trees, houses, and other buoys up front. You can kind of use other people, but I don't like to do that all the time, simply because they could be swimming the exact same pace as you, or they could be swimming slower than you, and you throw your swim time away because you're pacing off of someone who has exploded because they did half of it too fast. Now, once you get to this turn buoy over here, this is a notoriously tough section of the swim, because if in this scenario, we are going to be having a cross current that's going to be pushing us back down, right? So this is an area that we haven't really talked about yet. The opposite area, we talked from this side, but now we get it from the other side. So what most people do is they make this turn over here and they're done swimming, so they aim for this buoy over here. And as we talked about for this buoy, you're going to want to actually aim further away from the from that last finishing turn buoy. Failing to do so is going to result in you making a last second direct alteration, because you have to go around these red buoys over here. If you fail to go around over here, they're going to have to ask you to go back in and swim back around that buoy, so you can actually legally finish. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel like you're sighting at kind of marshland over here. There will be some houses way over here, but there's not really a good sighting spot aside from maybe the transition area, which is kind of over here, right? So you can do that if you can see. They might have some tents along this area over here, but pick something. I don't know what there will be. There's a couple of trees, but those aren't really helpful in this case. So you're just going to have to kind of go on feel right through here. And once you turn around here, it's a pretty easy straight shot up the landing route. Inversely, if you are coming along and you have a head current over here and you get pushed out over here, you're going to be doing a lot of the opposite. So a lot of this head current is going to make the swim really bunched up for this first long section. Don't panic. Don't fight it. Just embrace it. The athletes that succeed in this case are the ones that just accept that they're not going to get away from anyone in this head current here. Once you make this turn, that's when you can start to kind of get away from some other people. Since it's pushing you from a right to a left, you're going to, again, have to aim over here, similar to the last scenario over here. You're going to have to aim further over here. The bridge is too far away to kind of sight over there. And again, you're going to be sighting kind of into no man's land over here. But that's okay. As long as you know where the buoy is, you can just aim for a general spot over here. And then once you get around here, it's actually okay to push a little wide in this scenario because everyone's going to be really aiming for that buoy. Further out you are, the more of a push you're going to have coming back in. You will be swimming extra, so keep that in mind. And there will be people up here kind of preventing you from going too far off because you don't want anyone to just totally blow by that last buoy. Going in this last tailwind section over here, if the current is going this way and you are getting a push right to left, this is actually going to be a point where you can start to kind of cool down a little bit depending on how aggressive the current is. Super strong current means you are going to have to do some work in here, but for this section right here, you should use this as kind of a recovery or a spot where you can kind of maintain the effort and just accept that you're going to get here a lot faster than you think. So just make sure you are swimming straight and not zigzagging over here. Otherwise, you're going to totally negate this kind of slightly down recovery period. In this scenario, this last turn over here, you're going to actually aim for the transition area itself, right? Kind of cutting this area over here because it's going to push you further over here. And again, if you cut it a little too close, it will be very, very easy in this scenario to just go around it because the current's already pushing that way. And then the last big thing over here, once you get around this buoy in either scenario, you're going to have to fight a little bit, and that'll be perfect for increasing the kick. You're going to want to increase your kick anyways right around this time, no matter what situation that you are talking about. And that's to get your legs ready for that transition from swim to bike without cramping up your calves or your hamstrings or your quads. So just keep those kicks going a little bit faster than you have been for the course of the race here, and maintain your arm speed, and you'll be out lickety-split. So that is the swim in a nutshell. I'm glad I got to go through both swim kind of scenarios. New in 2020, you're going to be lining up for the swim start in a time trial area. Make sure you pay attention to social distancing markers. They're going to be really hammering people on that, so make sure you just pay attention to that and just accept it. It is what it is. They're letting you race mask free, so just embrace it. Just let them do their thing. They have a system right now, and let them keep going. In a couple more months, couple years, things are going to be back to normal. But now we cannot go that way. So just make sure you are following their rules per race site, which again, you're going to have to follow and listen for on the athlete briefing in the days leading up to it. Wetsuit rules. So above 84 degrees, wetsuits are illegal. 76.1 to 83.8, it is a wetsuit optional. That means you can wear it, but you will not be eligible for awards. Wetsuit legal 60.8 to 76.1, and wetsuit mandatory below 60.8. I don't think it's going to be that cold at all. We're probably going to be pushing these barriers instead, definitely not those ones. After the swim, you have to go through a timing chute to go to the bike transition. Make sure public nudity is not permitted, and you must be ready to ride the bike by the time you leave the transition area. If you are dropping out, you have to notify an official, turn in your timing chip, and And that is it. For any more things about the swim, make sure you head over to the athlete guide because we are going to the bike course next. So the bike course is a single loop course over here. Just want to get as much of it in as possible. So before we really talk about that, this is the bike course, a little more detailed for you. And as you can see, the elevation profile, I'm showing an elevation gain of about 330 feet over the course of the entire ride. So elevation, not really a factor in this one. Instead, what is a bigger factor here is typically the wind. So right now we are projecting a wind of about 8 miles an hour from east to west. That will make the first section even faster than what we are projecting, but again, we'll have to see on race day. When you come out of transition, it's a little tight in here, and it does kind of prevent you from getting up to speed until you get to around this main road over here, this Route 4 through 343. Once you get over there, you should be up to speed for sure. A couple of these turns, you can get up to speed, but you have to kind of come back down. So if you are kind of pushing the limits a little bit, make sure you are aware of that and you do not get stuck in that arrow position over here. You're going to be going in and out, especially around those turns, around other people. But then once you start to get on this main 343 road, that's when the temperature kind of gets turned up a bit. You can see this zigzag of what I'm talking about going out of transition here a little bit better. But going out over here, you're going to be going fast, especially with a right to left crosswind. So that means you're going to have tailwind coming over here. This section, believe it or not, you are going to be a little covered in here. You're going to experience a little bit of this headwind right in here, but again, it's not going to be as bad as you think. And then this section over here, notoriously windy no matter what direction you're going. Expect the crosswinds, expect a swirling wind in this area. Instead of just a one direction to the next, you might find that you're going to have a crosswind and then a headwind and then a tailwind all within the same mile, half a mile. It is what it is. Just accept it. Make sure you are loose on your handlebars and you are ready for some of those gusts. There's going to be fields, there's going to be grass that you can kind of see where some of the wind is coming from. So if you're paying attention to the vegetation around you, you shouldn't get caught off guard here. There's going to be a couple of trees as well where you can see some of that wind coming. So as long as you are smart about what is happening, if you're racing on some of those deeper dish wheel sets, you got to be more attentive to that kind of stuff. Once you get out over here past mile 10, then the speed really kicks up for a while. From mile 10 to mile 23-ish, that area is going to be very, very, very fast. Typically, you're going to have a tailwind in here. Typically, you're going to feel super, super great. And a lot of people really overdo this section. The easier thing to kind of be aware of is during this first 5 miles, there's going to be people everywhere. There's going to be some crowds everywhere. And it'll be easier to overdo that section from a stimulus standpoint. All right? You just kind of get caught up in the moment for those first 5 miles. Don't obviously do that. You're going to want to hit your targets, hit your effort levels. And then once you start to get past this 5-mile marker over here, the people really kind of disappear. There are going to be some people right around the high school area over here. But for the most part, it's pretty much going to be you and other racers out on the race course. So you can really, really check in with yourself once those crowds really start to disappear. And if you find that, okay, probably went out a little too hot, then you need to slow it down and kind of recover a little bit more there. This section over here that we were just touching on, that area is very, very lonely. Very lonely. Then it'll be really fast, so you'll be flying through here. The first water stop isn't until mile 16-ish, and that is by design. They know that you're going to be flying. It is a very, very fast course up until that point. That first water stop, if you're going to skip any water stop out on course, that would be the one to do it. I wouldn't suggest you skipping any water stops out on this course, but if you accidentally miss one, that would be the one where it will happen. The speeds are going to be really high. I touched on the water aid stations being very dangerous, that is probably one of the most dangerous ones out on course because the speed is so high there and it's early in the race. So you could have people that are on fixed gear bikes. You could have people who are experiencing a mechanical, just getting ready to go, and then try to get back out on the road and pop out into you right when you're trying to get your stuff. So just be careful at that aid station. It's easy at this one to slow down because you're going to have the wind, you're going to have the terrain in your favor, right? I mean, if we go back to the course, it's a steady downhill and then a steady uphill after that. So at this point in time, you could realistically really slow down just to be careful, get your stuff, and then pick back up to speed with minimal effort here. But once you start to get to the bottom of this section over here, there is a left-hand turn, a notoriously dangerous left-hand turn, not because of the danger level, but just because you'll be going so fast, and typically you kind of forget about the arrow position for a while. You just lose yourself in it, and you don't realize there is a turn coming. So, because the speeds are so high, a lot of people overshoot this turn. It's not a dangerous turn at all if you actually know where it is. But if you do it at the last second, you will go off the road very, very easily just because the speeds will be so high coming from that tailwind section. Now, once you start to make this turn over here, if the weather actually holds up, right, right to left, then this section is going to be your first dose of a mini headwind, especially right in here. And that's really hard for a lot of athletes because they have just been blasted by that tailwind for so long. Don't let that get in your head. This is wind riding for sure, right in there. So the biggest tip over here is just to keep the tension on the chain no matter what gear you're in. Even if you have to change it up into 4 easier gears, right? Just keep that chain working. Don't let any soft spots in the chain happen. Just keep the tension constantly on it. You're going to zigzag out through here. You're going to be able to pick your speed back up. That swirling wind that we talked about in this area over here. Down over here, it is going to happen again. So just because there is a right to left wind doesn't mean that it's going to stay that one direction. You're going to be changing directions here. There's going to be some weeds off to one side. There's going to be some trees blocking wind here and there. And because of that, it will swirl. It's just the nature of the terrain over here, this marshland, okay? There's going to be a second water stop right over here past mile 30. Again, this one you can kind of hit a little bit faster, but same deal. Because this race is so flat, you should be able to get back up to speed really minimally difficult level. So this next left-hand turn over here, this is another area that is notoriously difficult for riders, not because of terrain, but because of the wind. A lot of times this will be a direct headwind, at least initially. And a lot of athletes really struggle with that because up until this point, they have been in that TT position, which is going to come to as my first reminder to you guys. Every 5 or 10 minutes, you need to get out of that TT position. Stand up on the pedals, get up on the bullhorns, whatever you need to do. You're going to need to get out of that arrow position. I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but you're only going to need to stay out of it for about 3, 5, 10 seconds, right? 15 seconds at the max. And just change up that position a little bit. The athlete that struggles to do that and just stays in the arrow position up until mile 30 is going to be the one that is struggling big time right in here, and that becomes a big mental barrier for the rest of the race. I know it's not a long period of time, but it will become very, very difficult for that athlete to maintain their speed and just maintain that positive mindset. Second reminder, out on this course, because of the nature of this course, right? Because of this flat, super flat marshland, right? Because of that, a lot of people maintain the same effort level, that same power, and just, it's really easy to hold it. It's really easy to get locked in. And that, it goes back to that first point of getting out of that arrow position. What you're going to need to do is create a little course variance yourself. What I mean by that is standing on the pedals a little bit. If you don't want to do that, you want to stay in that arrow position, that is fine, right? Just change the gear level a little bit, change that cadence. If you're rocking a 90 to 95 RPM for these first 30 miles, the faster parts on this course, you're going to need to change those cadence a little bit. Don't be afraid to get into a little bit of a bigger gear and mash those pedals at 70 RPM, 75 RPM, maybe even 65 if you're feeling really, really good. And just do it for 5 or 6 pedal strokes and then get back into your cruising mode, right? And that's gonna really help you not get locked into that position, and especially once you get out onto the run. Those are the 2 biggest tips out on this course. Make sure you don't lose yourself in that aero position, and make sure you are changing the course variance yourself, because you won't have the terrain doing it for you, which is the case in most other places. If you were doing those 2 things up until this point, when this point happens, because of that headwind, right, you're going to be ready to go a lot more than other athletes. Those athletes who are in that aero position, they're going to have to really fight on this section for about 8 miles over here. And you will as well, but it will be a little bit different, right? You're going to be able to handle that stress a little bit more, which is going to come in handy once you get past this 40 mile marker point over here. As we talked about, this is just going to be a tough area for you. This mile 31 all the way to mile 40. It's just going to be tough. That's all I can say. Once you make the turn at mile 40, it will lighten up a little bit, but this is where wind and that mental fatigue starts to kind of creep in big time. Do not let that happen to you. Make sure you stay positive. If people are passing you, you got to minimize the damage as much as you can. If it is a super, super hot day out there and you are feeling the heat, this course is so flat, there's really not an excuse to not fuel, right? There's no real excuse to just get totally lost in your nutrition at all. Especially since this last water stop is coming up right over here, right after this, 47 mile marker. So that means once you make the turn at mile 40, you need to be fueling big time up until this water stop over here. And again, because this is a super fast course, once you get to this mile 46, 47, it's going to be fast coming in. There's only 10 more miles left. It's going to be less than 30 minutes typically, and you're just going to push. And you're not going to push. It's going to push you coming back this way for sure, and then you can kind of just manage it coming back into town. So it's going to be a super quick ride, and so this is your real last opportunity to kind of eat what you have on bike and then pick up whatever you need to for the last little bit of that ride. And if you fail to do that, right, then it's going to eat at you later on. Making the turn past the high school, you're going to go back on this road over here. It is a slight right-hand turn after you pass the high school, so just keep that in mind. I have seen athletes kind of go back for their second loop out on course. Do not do that. Do not go back for a second loop. That is the Ironman in October. This section, again, right here, it's going to be a swirling wind, right? And chances are it's going to swirl the exact opposite way as it was for you when you first came out, which is nice, right? Then once you make the turn off of Route 343, the arrow position is going to be your friend in here. So if you've eaten this whole time up in your arrow position from this, that 47 mile marker back in, it's not going to be as fun because the athletes that are going really fast here are the ones that are going to be in that arrow position hiding from the wind. And if you've spent your whole day in it so far pushing the power, it's going to be really tough for you to maintain that arrow position coming back into town. Speaking of coming back into town, once you start to pass these areas over here, you're going to need to start to back off the power a little bit, stretch it out a little bit, get yourself ready for that run. Again, keep the variance of that cadence, the power going all the way over here. And I'm not talking a monster variance. I mean, if we look at, this is an example of a power plan, right? Pretty easy, pretty steady the entire time. And you can see at the end, it kind of pops up and down a little bit. But for the most part, this is going to be one of the flattest courses you will ever see out on a race file. Okay? And you have to create some of the variance over here. So, for example, this athlete is supposed to hold 276 watts right at this point in time. I know, and you could probably know, mile 10.2 all the way to 22, right? You can't hold the same wattage for that amount of time. You're going to have to create some variance. And what I mean when I say that is this 275 target, I do not mean throwing in a variance of 350. I mean, maybe you bump it up to 280, 290, or you can stick to the 275, but you need to be changing the way you're putting out that power, standing on the pedals a little bit, smaller, bigger gear, whatever it is, right? Just change the variance yourself, okay? So going back here, that is the bike. Your last real opportunity to fuel, I would say, is probably in this area over here, right in here. Just because if you are fueling in this last section right here, not that it can't be done, there's a lot of headaches in here. There's a lot of left turns, right turns. There's a lot of other people, a lot of spectators. You don't know what's really happening in there. So you just got to pay a little bit more attention there. And again, because it's so flat, you're going to be flying at this section in time. If you find an opportunity where the crowd's thin out and there's no one really around you and you can fuel up, go for it. But just be aware of all the distractions that can come from this area over here. And that, my friends, is the bike. So now we're going to go on to the last part. These are the course rules over here. So you have 6 bike lengths and you have 25 seconds to pass on the bike. Those are the main rules. Don't litter. They're going to get you this year. If you want to take a look at some of those other ones, 33 and 34 on the bike or on the athlete guide. Okay, so the run. Fortunately, I don't have a profile for you on the run because it is really unneeded. It is very similar to the bike, very, very flat. Elevation gain, they have listed as a 105. The thing that is hardest about this course is just the amount of back and forths and just people everywhere. It is a 2-loop course. And there's going to be a water stop. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I counted that right. 4 or 5 per loop. So there's going to be a ton of water stops available to you. And that is going to be essential because it is really, really deceptive out there. It is flatter. The terrain is slightly inclining, slightly declining. You're going to be able to see really as far as you want to in front of you. And that is the first mental barrier of this run course. Because you can see what's going on in front of you, you can see what's going on in back of you. A lot of times this can eat at an athlete, especially when they're not at the best of spots out on the run course. If you're chasing someone down and you just can't close the distance, you're going to be able to see that person all the way down and all the way back. There's no really escaping people out on this course. So it really is a battle of you. Second big barrier out on this course is the heat. That is probably the first most important barrier here. The heat really, really eats at you out on this course. If you fail to hydrate, get your nutrition in on the bike, you're not going to be able to just muscle through it on the run, unfortunately. There have been years where it's cloudy and it's nice and cool and it's perfect. But I don't picture this year as being one of those years. It's raining every day next week leading up to it. So I'm envisioning a really hot, really humid race for everyone. And because of that, I would really, really approach this race very similar to Kona, right? Now, I know that's a big, big stretch. The humidity's not going to be as high, but the sun's going to bake you. It's going to cook you. There's really not going to be a whole lot of wind out on this course. And it just roasts you. It cooks you. Because of that, you're going to have to be on your nutrition, on your hydration, on your electrolytes, and you might have to set a timer on your watch to make sure you keep putting those calories, those electrolytes, the nutrients into your body. Because it's really, really hot, you can't just shove it into you, because at a really, really hot race, as everyone knows, you can't keep eating the way you want to eat and go your same pace. Something's going to have to give, either the nutrition or the pace, probably both. So if you keep your nutrition levels as you should, you're going to have to slow down, right? A lot of people don't want to do that. So what they do is they sacrifice their nutritional intake. When that happens, there is going to be a point somewhere where they crash. It could be right after the finish, which is kind of what you want, right? As a racer, not as a person, you don't want that. But what is more likely going to happen is you're going to create a right around this turnaround point over here. A lot of people call it a death march, right? And that's because everyone fails to recognize the heat. They fail to recognize those two things that we just talked about, nutritional intake and pacing. So if it is really hot and you haven't really raced in those conditions in a long time, or you're just not used to training in them, slow down. Slow down. It is okay. And typically what you're going to see on your targets is one real just baseline target, right? And that's because the profile out on this run is just pancake flat. That doesn't mean that you can't walk, run, alternate, right? You can run at that pace for 10 minutes and then back it down. You can walk for a minute or two, go back to that pace, come back down. But the athlete that gets through this the fastest is going to be the one that listens to their body, is actively monitoring what's happening with their body. If they are starting to get some twinges, things like that, then you need to recognize you're low on something, whether that be sodium, water, calories, whatever, right? Maybe you push the bike a little too hard and you're going to have to sacrifice some of that run pace a little bit. And that's the name of the game here, listening to your body. Because you can see everything, because it's not a really stimulating run, a lot of athletes get lulled to sleep, similar to the bike. And that's why Eagleman is a very, very dangerous course. You're going to be in the sun a lot. So if there's a sunscreen tent or something like that, make sure you hit it up because you're going to need it. You're going to need it if it's sunny. It doesn't help that you are running by water for much of the race, right? You're just going to look over there and you're just going to want to jump in, and after you finish, you'll see a lot of athletes do that. They just get back in the water and they just need to cool off. But this is a very, very tough run course, so make sure you are actively fueling, listening to your body. If you're starting to get a cramp or something like that, do not wait to react. A lot of you guys are already running with calories or with electrolytes, salt tabs, whatever. So if you're starting to get those twinges and things like that, then you know things are about to go south really quickly if you do not react. And I always say this, you can fix it. It will just take a little bit of time to fix, right? And the faster you react to it, the faster you identify what the problem is, the faster you're going to be able to get back up and going again. It might not be as fast as you want, but you will be able to come back. And the last real strategy on this course is to run your race. I know it's a pretty basic run strategy here, but it is a really basic course if you break it down. Run your race. Don't get caught up into other people, especially on that second loop. If you're a faster athlete and you're looping back around for your second loop, there's going to be people who are going to try to make up everything on that first loop that were a little slower on the bike, and just let them go, because you'll see them probably right around here again on your second loop, their first loop, and it's just not worth chasing them down. If you are a slower athlete, then you are going to have to be much more in tune with your body from the get-go. Some of these faster people can kind of figure it out, right? Because there's not going to be too many people on the course with them until that second loop. But unfortunately, some of those slower athletes, you do not have the luxury of kind of finding yourself and feeling out the course a little bit. So make sure you listen to yourself. It's probably going to be a hot day, and make sure you keep pumping those hydrations, calories, liquids. Make sure you keep putting them in your body, and don't be afraid to slow down a little bit, right? Let's say that your race target power is 250 watts on the run, right? You can start out a little slower than that. Obviously, gauge it out. Let's say you're going 225 watts on the run, and you're just hanging out, seeing what's going on for that first half a mile. Great way to start your race. Just slowly start to get back into it, even starting at that 200 mark, just seeing what happened. If 200 watts is all you got that day, and we know that you have crushed 250 watts before, I just released a heat video on the Facebook page, but same thing, right? If 200 watts is your max that day, and you just like, hey, I can't go any faster, then it is what it is. You know, that is your race that day. Like I said, you can fix it and it will come back. You just need to be patient and wait for it to come back. So run your race that day, start out slow, and just slowly start to get back into it and listen to your body out on that race course. So that is all I have for the race this time around. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, feel free to text me, email me, call me, whatever. I'll be happy to talk to you more about the race, and make sure you check out your specific athlete targets up on the Training Peaks for you. So that is all I got for you guys. Good luck, and let me know how it goes.